Sailors didn't make these things up. They were experienced men. They'd crossed oceans, survived storms. They didn't scare easily. So when they came back, describing creatures the size of islands, serpents that circled the earth, monsters that rose from perfectly calm water, people wrote it down. For centuries, we called those stories myths, but some of them weren't. You're on a boat. The storm just passed. The sea is flat. No wind, no sound. That's when Japanese fishermen knew to be afraid. Not the storm, the silence after. They called it Umibozu, the sea monk, a figure that rose from still water, faceless, enormous, just a shadow at first, then closer. Some said taller than the sail, others said tall as a mountain. Nobody agreed on the size because nobody stayed long enough to measure. Legend says if you speak to it, it asks for a bucket. Hand it a normal one, it fills your ship, calmly, steadily, watching you panic. The only escape, give it a bucket with no bottom. Confuse it long enough to sail away. This wasn't one fisherman's story. This was every fisherman's story. Coastal villages across Japan for centuries, independently describing the same creature, same silence, same shape, same bucket. Does Umibozu really exist? Science says no, but the sea goes quiet sometimes, in ways that don't make sense. And Japanese sailors still remember one name when it does. She wasn't born a monster. In Greek mythology, Scylla was a nymph, beautiful, loved by the sea god Poseidon. But Poseidon's wife found out, and instead of punishing him, she poisoned the spring where Scylla bathed. Scylla stepped into the water and came out something else. 6 heads, 12 legs, a ring of dogs growing from her waist. She didn't choose any of it. Jealousy turned her into a weapon and left her in a narrow channel directly across from a whirlpool called Charybdis. Sailors had 2 choices, the whirlpool or her. No third option. Homer placed that channel at the Strait of Messina, a real stretch of water off Italy, still known for its violent, unpredictable currents. Ships genuinely disappeared there. Here's the twist. Scientists believe the sailors weren't lying. Giant squid arms breaking the surface, oarfish writhing near the rocks. 6 heads, or 6 tentacles, in the dark on a terrified ship. Does Scylla really exist? The monster, no. But the thing that inspired her was there, probably still is. A serpent so large it wraps around the entire earth and bites its own tail. In Norse mythology, that's not a metaphor. That's a literal creature living in the ocean right now. Odin threw Jormungandr into the sea as a child. He just grew, fed on the ocean itself until his body circled the planet. Norse mythology says when he releases his tail and rises, everything ends. Even Thor, who kills him, takes 9 steps and falls from the venom. You've seen him in God of War. You know the scale. In 2008, paleontologists found fossils of Paleophis colossus, a real sea snake, nearly 50 feet long, that lived 60 million years ago. Ancient people found those bones washing up on beaches, enormous coiled vertebrae, curved like something that had once circled something. They didn't have the word fossil, they had the word serpent. Does Jormungandr really exist? No, but something that size once moved through these oceans. The Bible describes Leviathan as something God created just to prove a point. Smoke from its nostrils, fire from its mouth. Nothing on earth its equal. Chapter 41 of Job. God asks, Do you understand what you're dealing with? For thousands of years, Leviathan was scripture, symbolic. Then in 2010, paleontologists dug up a skull in the Peruvian desert. A sperm whale, but wrong. Teeth 12 inches long pointing outward from both jaws. 60 feet of bone. Not a filter feeder, a hunter. It killed other whales. For millions of years, it was the most dangerous animal in the ocean. They named it Leviathan melvillei, pulling up enormous teeth from the deep. Had no idea what they were describing. Does Leviathan really exist? It did, and the teeth still wash up on beaches. Black, enormous, almost too heavy to hold. You already know this one. 60 feet long, teeth the size of your hand. For 20 million years, the megalodon was the ocean. Everything else was just something it hadn't eaten yet. Extinct for 3.5 million years. Case closed. Except 2 megalodon teeth were dredged from the Pacific floor and dated. One came back, 11,000 years old. The other, 10,000. Not prehistoric. The Hadal zone, below 20,000 feet, has barely been touched. In 2023, a research vessel recorded an acoustic signature matching no known species, published quietly, no headlines. Does the megalodon really exist? Almost certainly not, but almost is doing a lot of work in that sentence. In 1997, underwater microphones placed across the Pacific to detect nuclear tests picked up a sound, 1 minute long, detected by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. Scientists estimated the source would need to be several times larger than the biggest blue whale ever recorded. They called it the bloop. The coordinates were plotted on a map. They fell almost exactly on the location described in H.P. Lovecraft's 1928 story, The Sunken City of R'lyeh, home of Cthulhu, a story written 70 years before the sound was recorded. Scientists attributed it to an ice quake. But ice quakes have a signature, a shape. The bloop's acoustic profile didn't match. For centuries in Japan, whales were sacred. When one washed ashore, communities held funerals, built graveyards. A whale wasn't food, it was a gift, and gifts deserved respect. Then, commercial whaling arrived. By the 1960s, nearly 3 million whales taken from the Pacific. No funerals, just product. That's when fishermen near Japan's Oki Islands started seeing something in the storms. A whale, but not a whale, a skeleton. Harpoons passed straight through. When it surfaced fully, it watched them, then disappeared. They called it Bakekujira, the ghost whale. In Japan, any creature that dies violently and without honor becomes an onryo, a spirit of vengeance that doesn't move on. Does the ghost whale really exist? Maybe the better question is whether we deserve it if it does. The oceans are warming. Whale songs now compete with shipping lanes and sonar. The ghost isn't haunting Japan, it's haunting all of us. Every creature on this list was written off as imagination. The Kraken, impossible until the giant squid washed ashore. Leviathan, scripture until its skull came out of the ground. The bloop, paranoia until the recording was released. The legend comes first, the proof comes later. Subscribe, because the next list goes deeper.